We could make this technology work.
Wow, we can really do this, and we can achieve this mission, which is something that is really needed for us to understand global change.
So we had done a couple of demonstration satellites, but the next steps we wanted to do was to scale it up to test the first fleets of satellites.
But what made that possible was actually access to space.
So here's the problem, that in order to take pictures of the entire Earth every day, you're going to need more than one or two satellites. You're going to need a whole lot of satellites. There's only one obvious choice on how to deploy that, and that's the International Space Station.
There was no other platform in the world in order to get access to space of that fashion in that time period than the International Space Station.
NanoRacks is our key partner with NASA.
At NanoRacks, we understood Planet Labs' vision, and we knew that we could help. We worked together to figure out what was going to be the best way to get as many satellites as possible, and we basically developed a new platform. It goes out of the GIM airlock, it's picked up by a robotic arm, pointed out into space, and it fires these little satellites off of the space station.
They were able to secure 28 of our satellites to be launched from the International Space Station, and that was known as Flock 1, our first constellation.
This opened up the whole world to satellite developers, people that could put things into orbit fast.
We now deploy these on a regular basis from the International Space Station. And now today, we're able to operate the largest fleet of Earth imaging satellites in human history.
And none of that would have been possible without the International Space Station.
The International Space Station does enable young, small companies like ourselves to get going in space.
The ISS provides a lot of opportunities for commercial companies to test and find where the market in space is going to be.
And so what we're seeing today is a proliferation of new ideas and new concepts. It's almost like it's a renaissance of what's happening in space. Buckle up and strap down, because this is going to be a rocket for all of us in the global community to be part of.
The first pictures now coming in from Puerto Rico after taking a
That's how young people, men and women, feel when they're coming to work at NASA today.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was wondering what you guys are most excited for about the future of spaceflight, and do you guys plan on going to space again?
Well, it's a great time to be in the space business. This next decade is going to just be unbelievable based on the trajectory that the space business is on right now. As you know, a lot of commercial and private companies are building spacecraft, some to take people, some to take satellites and other things to orbit. And so it's a really great time to be in the space world. As you may have heard, there's a flight coming up in the fall called Inspiration 4, which is going to have three non-professional astronauts that'll launch on a SpaceX vehicle into orbit. So that's going to kind of open up a lot of doors, I think, and maybe the pathway for the future to give access to more people to this incredible thing that we get to experience all the time called space.
All right. I noticed a little penguin flying around with you guys. Like, is there a story about that?
So we get to have, there's a tradition, I think maybe the Russians started this, but the Demo 2 crew carried it on and brought a zero-G indicator with them on that first flight of the Crew Dragon. And so we've carried on that tradition, and basically it's a little friend that you can bring along, and then once you reach the, once your engine's all cut off, the little friend starts to float. So it's your zero gravity indicator, and we were able to, our sons chose this, myself and one other crew member have young sons, and so we asked them to choose something that they would like to see fly with us, and so they found Gwyn. This is Gwyn, our penguin.
Aww, that's adorable.
All right, so I know you guys touched upon this a little bit earlier, but so we've worked with some rocket engines, in industry and research, and the highest thrust levels we've kind of experienced are on the order of tens of thousands of pounds, and even that, kind of shook us to our core. So we were wondering, how does it feel and sound to be on top of a rocket putting out, over 1 million pounds of thrust?
Well, it feels incredible, as you might imagine. And the power, when the engine's lit for us just a few weeks ago, we were on the launch pad for a couple hours, first of all, but when the engine's lit, we all were so excited. It just felt incredibly powerful. We knew we were getting ready to go somewhere really fast. And then, of course, we're strapped in very tight. And then we just enjoy the ride for the next 8.5 to 9 minutes being on those engines. So on the SpaceX rocket, you may know there's 2 stages. So the first stage cuts off after about 2.5 minutes. And then we have a little bit of weightlessness before the second engine lights, and then a nice kick in the pants there to accelerate us for the next 6.5 minutes or so to get us into orbit. So it's hard to describe the whole thing. We're going in and out of about 3, sometimes almost 4 Gs throughout the ride, but it's not continuous.
All right. Thank you. And this is also kind of related, but how do you mentally prepare for liftoff? Like, what goes through your head during the countdown?
So we did a lot of training together. Shane and I, as the commander and the pilot, we spent a lot of hours in the SpaceX simulator preparing for the mission for every phase. Control team, and we're talking, kind of reviewing things. Hey, if this happens, we'll do this. If this happens, we'll do that. But a lot of it, you're there for 2 hours before you lift off. So we're just, kind of keeping each other entertained between sort of more serious conversations. And so, the preparation doesn't come on that day. The preparation is something that you've been doing for years, really.
Awesome, thank you. So, like I mentioned before, I'm currently, working on my PhD, and I know, Megan, that you did your PhD in oceanography. So I was wondering, what skills did you develop during, the course of graduate school that helped prepare you to be an astronaut?
Well, I often talk about how oceanography and living in space can be very similar. So with oceanography, we go out to sea on ships. We have equipment that we're going to deploy and recover. And if something breaks on that equipment, you need to be able to fix it. You need to be able to get, all of the computers to talk to all of the equipment. So there's a lot of similar technical skills, and then there's some similar life skills. You're living in a contained environment with several other people who may or may not have the same habits as you. So there's some team skills and some life skills that you work on as well. So all of those things, I think, contribute to being prepared to being an astronaut.
All right, thank you.
So since you guys recently began your mission and launched last month, we were wondering kind of what the first 24 hours after docking are like, that transient period, maybe before getting settled in.
Hey, are you talking about before we docked or after we docked?
Either one. Just the very beginning of the mission, kind of that was yeah.
Like what the transition
Gotcha,
is
yeah.
like.
So we had about 23 hours, I think, from launch. Yeah, from launch to docking. So that was a free flight, we call it. So on the way up to the space station, it was, once we got to orbit, we were extremely happy. And then, we had a chance to get out of our spacesuits, kind of get kind of normal clothes on like this. And then we didn't have a lot to do, honestly, that day. There are a couple things we do with the checklist, but other than that, we're just kind of eating some food and getting ready for bed. We slept, or we were supposed to sleep at night. Megan and I didn't sleep so well that first night, but the other two slept great. And then we get our spacesuits on the next day to get ready for the docking and approach. So coming in, we had a beautiful, really no issues coming in to dock with the International Space Station. We docked on the very forward parts. There was another Crew Dragon, which had docked to the Zenith. And so it was really neat to have 2 Crew Dragons docked to the space station at one time. Our friends left just, I guess, about a week ago now, almost a week ago, Crew 1, when they came home. So now we're getting busy up here, getting settled in, as you kind of alluded to before. With 11 people up here was a little hard. There was just people everywhere, and we weren't super efficient. But now we're getting settled in, so we can do the best work we can during the day.
All right. Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of that. So you mentioned, sleeping is maybe a little bit of an issue. So how do you guys decide when to go to bed, and how do you kind of adjust